My name is Jim, and the story I'm about to share takes place in 1996. At the time, I was a teenager working as a firefighter at a remote tower in the Pacific Northwest. The job seemed pretty straightforward. Watch for signs of fire, report any unusual activity, and stay in touch with other towers and base. It's the kind of job where you have a lot of time to think, a lot of time to be alone. Isolation is part of the job, and in a world before the internet, before smartphones, that isolation could even seem appealing. Deep down, this story isn't about fires. It's about something else, something I can't explain, something most people don't believe when I tell them. But it happened. I've carried it with me for years. Now, decades later, my hope of finding someone who would believe me, or better yet, who had experienced something like this, is slowly fading. But I can't shake the feeling that I can't be alone. It all happened during my first week working in the fire tower, and I had already settled into a rhythm that filled the long, lonely hours. Every morning, the sun would peek through the tower's small windows, signaling the start of my day. I would get out of my creaky bed and head to the compact kitchen area. I would boil water for coffee on the small stove. Its aroma filled the small space, giving me a sense of comfort and normalcy. Mug in hand, I would climb the few steps to the observation deck. From there, the view was both beautiful and terrifying. In every direction, a vast sea of trees stretched out, seemingly endless. I scanned the area carefully, using binoculars for signs of smoke or fire. My role here was crucial. Even a small fire could turn into an uncontrollable inferno if it wasn't spotted in time. My radio equipment sat on a wooden table, my primary means of communication with the base and other towers. Every morning and evening, I reported in on schedule. But today, the routine had changed. During my first inspection of the forest, my eyes caught something that didn't belong here. At the edge of the forest, far beyond the usual hiking trails, stood dark figures. They simply stood still, as if watching the tower or me. My pulse began to race. I gripped the radio microphone tighter, preparing to report what I was seeing. I hesitated for a second, wondering if my imagination was playing tricks on me. But it wasn't. When I looked again, the figures were still there. Their presence is unmistakable. I pressed the radio button, and my voice rings with a note of urgency that I hadn't heard before. Up until this point, the days on the tower had been peaceful. My supervisor, Dave, answered over the radio. His voice was calm. "Jim, you're probably seeing wildlife or shadow play. Don't worry about it." But despite his explanation, I couldn't shake the feeling that what I was seeing was real. I wrote down the time and place of the sighting in my journal in case I needed it later. At this point, my anxiety only increased, but I decided to distract myself by doing some technical work. Sweeping the floor, washing the windows, putting away the canned goods in the pantry. But I kept glancing at the edge of the forest, waiting for the figures to move. Batteries and first aid kits suddenly seemed more important. Knowing exactly what resources I have for the day is a priority. It's time to sweep the forest again. I pick up my binoculars, hesitating for a moment before looking. When I finally focus on the edge of the forest, the figures are gone. I feel a mixture of relief and worry. Have they retreated or moved where I can't see them? The crackle of my radio interrupts my thoughts. It's time for the evening check-in. I report that everything is fine, even though it's not. The base shuts down without any further questions, and I'm alone again. As the sun sets, I heat up a can of soup for dinner. As I eat, I turn to the windows more often than to my spoon. I sit down with a book, trying to relax, but the words on the page don't register. My mind keeps drifting to the shadowy figures and the unknown variables they introduce into my solitary existence. Finally, I put down my book and decide to turn in for the night. Sleep doesn't come easily. I lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my ears straining to catch any unusual sound. Every creak of the tower, every rustle of wind through the trees seems amplified. The next day begins as usual. I wake up, make myself a cup of coffee, and head to the lookout. The forest seems even more vast today, perhaps because of the anxiety I still carry about yesterday's strange encounter. I grab my binoculars and begin my usual scan of the trees. The morning light breaks through the leaves, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow on the ground. And here they are again. This time, they are closer than before, standing in a small clearing no more than 200 yards from the tower. As I focus my binoculars, I can make out more detail. They look humanoid, but they are covered in what looks like dark, tattered clothing. Their features are obscured, as if they are shrouded in shadow despite the morning light. Their shapes shift unevenly, almost like static on an old television screen. They are distorted, making it difficult to focus on any particular features, as if my eyes are sliding over them, refusing to lock onto them. Gathering my thoughts, I reach for the radio microphone, hesitating for a moment before pressing the transmit button. Tower 4, this is a replica of Tower 6. Can you hear me? I try to keep my voice calm, hiding the nervous energy inside. The radio crackles, and then a familiar voice comes in. This is Tower 4. I can hear you. What's wrong? Tower 6. I pause, wondering how to explain this. Have you seen anything unusual lately? Shadowy figures at the edge of the woods? The line is silent for a few seconds before Tower 4 answers. Shadowy figures? You mean like animals? I saw a couple of deer and a bear, but no shadowy figures. Why? What do you see? I take a deep breath, feeling both relieved and more isolated by his answer. I've been seeing them for 2 days now. They're not animals. They're humanoids that were standing at the edge of the woods yesterday, but today they're closer, about 200 yards from my tower. They're just standing there, watching. Another pause, longer this time. You're not just seeing things, are you? It can be pretty lonely out there. You know, the mind plays tricks. I grip the microphone tightly. I thought so too at first, but today they're there. They are covered in dark clothing, and their features are blurred, as if they are made of static or something. This time, when Tower 4 speaks, there is a different tone in his voice. Okay, I haven't seen anything like it, but I'll keep an eye out now. Just be careful, okay? Maybe keep the door locked. I nod, even though he can't see it, and put down the microphone. His words, though they are meant to be reassuring, make me feel even more alone. The next morning, I wake up with a sense of dread. The conversations and sights of the past few days are haunting me. After making coffee, I climb up to the observation deck. My hands shake slightly as I pick up the binoculars. I immediately look at the clearing where the figures were yesterday. My eyes scan the area, but there is nothing there. For a moment, relief washes over me, but then a sudden realization tears me apart. I haven't checked the other areas closer to the tower. My hands move almost involuntarily, scanning the area around me, and there they are. Shadowy figures. Still, they're 100 yards away, closer to one of the walkways that lead to the tower. Half hidden by the trees, but they are definitely coming my way. My heart is pounding as I try to find the radio microphone. I press the button, my voice trembling with tension. Tower 6, this is Tower 4. What is the situation? The voice answers. They're getting closer, only 100 yards away now, and near one of the walkways. I try to speak calmly, but it is not working well. After a pause, I hear a worried reply. Are you sure these are not tourists or hunters? I am sure. They're not people, at least not the ones I know. They're moving deliberately. Keep your eyes open. Stay inside after sunset, lock the door, and keep your weapon nearby if you have one. I nod, even though no one can see me. My gaze drifts to the forest, where the dark figures disappear between the trees. I'm impatient. I take out a topographical map, mark with a red cross the places where I've seen these figures, and try to find some pattern. But there's none. Every night they come closer. In desperation, I contact my colleague Jessica. This is Jim from Tower 6. Have you ever seen anything like this? After a pause, she replies, No, but it sounds scary. Maybe you're just tired? The radio suddenly goes off. My heart sinks. I try to fix it, but it's no use. Now I'm truly alone. The darkness is getting thicker, and the forest is getting more and more ominous. Through the binoculars, I see the figures approaching the base of my tower. A shiver runs through my body. I know the danger is already here. I barricade the door with furniture, even though it is a weak defense. I sit tensely, listening only to the wind and my own breathing. All that remains is to wait and hope that I will have enough strength to respond to the unknown. The tower creaks, the leaves rustle, and every sound makes my pulse race. I feel trapped, like an animal with its eyes closed. Rushing to the barricaded door, I hope for a quick solution, but it doesn't happen. I hear my own shallow breathing filling the room, growing with anxiety. Raising my binoculars, my hands shaking, I look at the base of the tower. The figures remain in place, waiting for the sign to move. The tension becomes unbearable as my mind chases questions without answers. As the first rays of light cut through the darkness, I see the figures retreat into the forest, merging with the trees. The sun should bring peace, but I feel only a chill inside. I sit in my chair trying to collect my thoughts. Everything drags on forever, every movement a meaningless routine. Trying to reset the radio is fruitless. The lack of human contact, even just a voice on the radio, intensifies my isolation. The sunset brings more anxiety, a reminder of the night to come. The sky is dark, and without the moon or stars, everything seems empty. I see figures at the base of the tower. They're getting closer. I wonder if I should fire a flare, or if that will cause even greater danger. Suddenly, I hear a noise that stands out against the background of the forest. Something is approaching the tower. I quickly stand up, grabbing my pistol and torch. Taking a deep breath, my hands shaking, I fire a flare. The forest is briefly illuminated by red light. The figures retreat, but I don't know if I've averted danger or only exacerbated the situation. The fire spreads across the dry leaves, and I rush to the fire extinguisher. My veins pumping, my hands almost working on autopilot to remove the barricades I've set up to enter. Ignoring the voice in my head warning me of danger, I open the door and race down the stairs, my feet sliding on the ground. I run towards the small fire, feeling the heavy but manageable fire extinguisher. The discharge of the extinguisher covers the flames with a cloud of foam. Then the fire dies down, leaving only smoke that slowly dissipates. But now that I'm out of the safety of the tower, my eyes run through the forest, searching for any sign of the dark figures. They're nowhere to be seen, and that worries me even more. Why haven't they taken the opportunity? I clutch the flare, hoping for some comfort as I watch the darkness that haunts me. The morning sun begins to rise, filling the sky with shades of orange and pink. The radio comes back to life, and I hear a voice announcing the fifth day at the base. Over the radio, I recount what happened last night. Those figures approaching, they were too close. I can't forget it. The rescue team arrives. I still feel the pressure of the inexplicable events. They find footprints in the tree and the charred remains of a torch, but my doubts are still there. One of them even suggests that they might be animals. I insist that they were people, tall figures standing and watching. The team tries to explain it away as stress and isolation, but I know it was real. If only they could see it. I hear the engine again and drive out of the forest, but I realize that I am leaving something important behind. All that remains are the traces of unknown figures that continue to haunt my thoughts. Something strange and disturbing defied logic and reason, and that feeling stayed with me as we continued to drive away. Time passed, but the memory of those incomprehensible numbers still haunted me after much internal debate. I finally decided it was time to visit the tower again. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I drove into the woods. I parked my car at the edge of a strip of trees and took a deep breath, stealthily, before beginning the familiar trek to the tower. When I reached the base, the tower looked much as I remembered it, except for the overgrown vines that had crawled up its sides. No one had used this tower for many years, as it had been abandoned long ago. I placed my hand on the wooden railing and began to climb the stairs. The stairs creaked under my weight, a familiar sound that took me back in time. I could feel the years of disuse in the worn wood, the air thick with dust and lingering memories as I climbed higher. I remember countless times making this same journey, always with a sense of duty, but never with the trepidation I feel now. Reaching the landing before the summit, I pause for a moment. These are the last few steps that lead to the observation room. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I climbed the remaining steps and found myself standing before a closed door. The paint was peeling and the metal handle was tarnished, but it was as I remembered. My hand hesitated over the doorknob, gathering courage. I took the handle and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing the room. As I stepped inside, it was as if I had entered an antiquated capsule. The same wooden table, the same chairs, even the same old radio that once connected me to the outside world. A thick layer of dust covers everything, giving the room an air of abandonment. But despite this, I feel like I've returned to an old chapter of my life, one I close but never forget. I approach the window with binoculars and observation devices, preparing myself for what I might see. But for now, the forest below is almost corny, untroubled. It offers me no answers, only reflections of the mysteries I've experienced. My gaze scans the area where I've seen those elusive figures most often. Nothing unusual catches my eye, just the typical sea of green. I'm about to turn away when, out of the corner of my eye, I catch a glimpse of dark shapes lurking deep within the forest. My heart leaps into my throat, and I quickly turn my binoculars back to where I thought I saw them, but now there is nothing there. I have scanned the area intensely, finding nothing out of the ordinary. Did I really see them, or was my mind playing tricks on me? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. In any case, I decided it's time to go. I put down my binoculars and take one last look at the forest. Unreal or not, the numbers remain a mystery, a chapter in my life that refuses to close. With a heavy heart, I leave the observation room, close the door behind me, and descend the tower steps. I begin my journey back to my car. The forest is still serene, but the anxiety is heavy in my stomach. As I drive, the tower grows smaller in the rearview mirror until it is completely swallowed up by the forest. Although years have passed, the experience remains etched in my memory. No one ever believed my story, dismissing it as a product of isolation and overimagination. But I know what I saw and what I felt.